by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
You could have £17,777 in tax-free cash to play with this spring. Cash to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we're also going to give you not one, but two sought-after designer watches and the latest Mulberry handbag. How would winning that sound? For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new Royal Newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co. Well, it was the day that we've all been waiting for. Today was indeed the day.
More money in the pockets of working people. Higher living standards promised by this Labour government, delivered by this Labour government.
Yes, indeed. Well, we now know the content of the spring statement. More benefit cuts, more money for defence, more for housing, and more cash to find tax cheats. But when it all comes down to growth, ladies and gents, terrible news, because it's been forecast that those predictions have been halved. Got to say as well, Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride, he was having none of it.
To govern, Mr. Speaker, is to choose. Over the period. And this Chancellor has made all the wrong choices.
But worry not, ladies and gents, it's all right, because apparently we're all going to be £500 richer. So there you go. It is the only story in town tonight, so we've got a very special programme for you. Not just the panel, but look at this, what a treat. I've got a live studio audience. The excitement is palpable. It must be that extra £500 a year. I think that's what it is that people are perhaps feeling excited about. Alongside my audience, I've got my panel. I've got Michael Wilson, the business and economics commentator. And alongside him, I've got the MP Richard Tice, the deputy leader of Reform UK. And I've got, last but not least, Barry Gardner, the Labour MP for Brent West. But before we get stuck in and start planning how we're going to spend our 500 quid, let's cross live and give you your 6 o'clock news headlines.
Michelle, thank you and good evening. I'm Katie Bowen. These are your latest headlines from the GB Newsroom. The Chancellor has said this afternoon that there are no quick fixes to prosperity and said that October's budget was a once-in-a-generation event. That's as the Office for Budget Responsibility halved the UK growth forecast for this year from 2% to 1%. But Rachel Reeves also announced that OBR have upgraded their growth forecast from next year to 2029. In her spring statement, she announced final adjustments to benefits changes unveiled last week. She says the cuts will save £4.8 billion in the welfare budget. The OBR's assessment shows that those welfare reforms will push 250,000 people into poverty. The Chancellor went on to tell the Commons that the global economy has become more uncertain, adding that the UK has to move quickly in a changing world, as she confirmed a £2.2 billion increase in defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. Ms Reeves added that house building will hit a 40-year high thanks to Labour's planning reforms, but the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, labelled the fallout to the Chancellor's statement as chaos. GB News can reveal that around 300 small boat migrants crossed illegally to the UK today. The migrants made the journey in 6 small boats, taking the total number of Channel migrant arrivals since Labour came to power to more than 30,300. Today saw the 8th straight day of crossings, with around 1,900 arriving at the Border Force Processing Centre in Dover since last Thursday. A record 30,000 migrants have arrived by small boats in Dover since Labour came to power. And just some brief breaking news as you've been hearing this evening. Nigel Farage and NatWest have settled their debanking dispute. They said in a joint statement today, NatWest Group and Nigel Farage MP are pleased to confirm that they have resolved and settled their dispute, and the bank has apologised to Mr Farage. The terms of that settlement are confidential. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Michelle.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Everybody, look, what a treat for us all today, because the day that we've been anticipating has finally come, hasn't it? We've spent hours now debating, pontificating what on earth is going to be in that spring statement. Well, now we, ladies and gents, have the answer. Right till 7 o'clock, we will be discussing and dissecting whether or not it's all been a good thing or not, and crucially, whether or not all of us essentially are going to have a better, wealthier, happier, safer life as a result. Alongside me, I've got my panel. I've got Michael Wilson, the business and economics commentator, MP Richard Tice, the deputy leader of Reform UK, and Barry Gardner, the Labour MP for Brent West. Good evening, gents, to all of you. And you know the drill on this programme, don't you? It's not just about us. It's also tonight about the studio audience, and also, of course, about you at home. Join the conversation. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. Go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay. Of course, you can tweet or you can X us. But look, let's cross live then to the lady. Well, not live, but she was speaking, of course, today, 12:30, in case you've all been at work wondering when it all went on. Let's listen to Chancellor Rachel Reeves with some of the things that she had to say today.
They have no plan. Let me remind them about ours. The minimum wage up, real wages up, house building up, NHS investment up, investment in our schools up, investment in our roads up, defence spending up. Every single one of those policies opposed by the party opposite. Opposed by the Conservatives, opposed by Reform, opposed by the SNP, opposed by the Liberal Democrats, and opposed by the Greens. Mr. Speaker, it's the anti-growth coalition in action. They are the blockers, we are the builders, securing Britain's future, protecting working people and delivering change.
Oh, well, that's all right then. Everything's rosy, nothing to see here. We're all doing just fine. Thank you very much. That's the end of the programme. Just kidding, because many people completely disagree with some of that. But let's start then, shall we? Michael, can you just give people a roundup of the key points that was announced today?
What I was waiting for was a definition of working people. We still didn't get that. We heard that many, many times. But apparently, some people are working people and some people aren't working people. But that's something that we didn't get. So what do we get? Heavily forecast growth is going to fall. We know that. We knew that in any case. Fall by 1%. That's according to the OBR. Defence spending is going to rise to 3% of GDP, which is a lot, by 2030. How it's going to get there? No idea. And there may be some big savings for tax avoidance and tax evasion. Again, easier said, easy to say. I think there are going to be big tax rises in her autumn statement at the end of the year.
Well, I've got to say, she was asked repeatedly, actually. Mel Stride essentially asked her whether or not she would rule out more tax increases in the autumn budget. Wasn't really answered. Rachel Reeves did a press conference this afternoon about 4:15. She was again asked a direct question: are we going to see tax rises in that autumn budget? Again, I would argue she didn't actually answer that question. Let me throw this to the studio audience. Just a quick show of hands. Is there anyone that feels positive about the spring statement today? Don't all be shy. Anyone at all? If you're listening on the radio, the short answer to that was no. Not a single hand went up. Is there anyone, therefore, then, that feels, I don't know, less optimistic, depressed, perhaps, by the outcomes of today? Hands up. Yes. And there's a few people, maybe in the middle. Richard Tice has just put his hand up as well. Right, let me ask some of the audience. I'll start with you. I want some key points, some key questions, some key thoughts from all of you. Who's volunteering to go first? Don't be shy. There we go, that chap there in the green top. Hello, what's your name and what's your point?
My name's Angus. I'd like to ask Barry about employment. I've got 2 children, both of whom work as part-time lifeguards to supplement their studies. So far, since Labour came in, one is being handed his P45 on Monday. The other one's had their hours cut and has had to take on a second job to make ends meet. Are you happy supporting a government that destroys jobs?
Yeah. Angus, I'm really sorry to hear about your son's situation. If you look at what happened today, Pache, what Michael said, growth this year has dropped by a half. But actually, the forecast is that next year it rises to 1.7% and beyond that to 1.8 and so on. And that's an increase in what was projected last year at the budget. And it's because of that that they're saying that there is going to be growth in the economy because we've actually introduced all the plans for building, house building and getting jobs into the economy. So you're right, it hasn't been seen yet, it hasn't fed through yet, and that's exactly what today's OBR was all about. It was because they weren't going to meet their fiscal rules. That's why she had to do this emergency spring statement and do what she did in order to then meet the fiscal rules and not borrow yet more. But I hope that the moves that she's made are going to create the jobs in the economy, and that's what the forecasts say is going to happen, and why we get growth in the later 4 years of that 5-year period.
We'll come back to that, and I suspect Richard Tice might have some thoughts on that one as well. Another point from the audience, please. That chap there has got his hand straight up. Hang on. We have to do a very technical thing, ladies and gents. If you listen on the radio, we have to pass that microphone around. Let's go. Your question.
Yeah, hi there. Obviously, we were in this black hole, and now all of a sudden we're now getting £500. Where's the money coming from? That's what I'm asking for. Where's it coming from?
If you missed this and you've just tuned in, you're wondering what we're talking about, apparently that was one of the key takeaways that many people actually had from this, that we're all apparently going to be £500 a year better off. Quick show of hands in the audience. Who believes that? Anyone? Anyone? Is there like a shy hand holder lurking at the back? Once again, if you are listening on the radio, you're not watching, I've got to say that yet again, no hands went up there. That shows me that people are not perhaps feeling optimistic about that £500. One more point from the audience. You there with the glasses, yet?
I think the £500 better off in a year's time. This is the thing that everybody's going to remember her saying, and I think this is going to come back and bite her.
I suspect you might be right now. Let's just, Richard Tice, bring you in. Your top-line thoughts on the statement today?
Delusional. This was completely delusional. These numbers were... I mean, it was a theatre of sort of magical mystery numbers. The OBR's forecast... So they've halved their forecast for this year, blaming geopolitical situations, but all of a sudden at Christmas, peace and love is going to break out, and we're going to have significantly more growth next year and every year after that, with no explanation. These numbers are a complete delusional myth.
And if I may just add to your point, and this is the reality of it. This is not a politician speaking, but the reality is there are two big events coming up. First of all, it's going to be much more expensive to employ people because of the employers' national insurance increase, and also remember Trump tariffs on April the 2nd. Now he's calling it Independence Day. This is going to be very important indeed. This may mean, it may not, but it may mean that we have to understand the fact that the Americans will be paying 25% on our imports into that country, which again is, as far as I'm concerned, is anti-business. Now that may or may not happen to the UK, certainly happen as far as Europe's concerned.
Barry, what's your top-line thoughts on what you heard today?
My thoughts are actually very much with the people who are going to suffer under PIP. Because what really concerns me is that I understand the need to put more money into defence, right? And we're in a totally unprecedented situation where it now appears that we can no longer rely on the United States as a solid partner for Europe's defence. And they've been making the case, in fact, we've been making the case as well, that we need to spend more on defence, and that's going to come through. And so I understand the need to do that. But I feel that we've been presented with a false choice, that either you put the money in defence or you keep people getting the money that they're getting on welfare. It's not like that. You don't have to take the money from some of the poorest and most disadvantaged people in the country in order to pay for defence, or indeed for the poorest people in the world in order to pay for defence. So I think a lot of people have been very scared by what they've heard over the past week. They're worried about what their benefits are going to be. They're really concerned that the things that they needed just for the additional living costs that they have as people with long-term disability or sickness are going to not be there for them. And that is hugely worrying. Against that, let me say, I think the government's absolutely right to be enabling people to try work, this right to try. People have an obligation to work if they can, and I think that's right. And I think the push to get more people who are able to back into work is right. But you can't put people in a position where you cut their benefits and say, well, if you can't work, tough. And that is the fear that I think has gripped a lot of people.
Just the Motability, for example, is a great scheme. I think it's about 815,000 people use it. The trouble is that some of those people actually game it. They use it to buy nice cars, don't they? Now, again, that's one report.
It's a well-intentioned scheme.
It's like most things. It's a well-intentioned, yes. But it needs policing.
Grotesquely abused. Yeah. The idea that it's increased by over 150,000 people in 1 year. It's sort of that scheme, well-intentioned, it's the laughingstock of the car industry, and we've got to address it. But I'm going to try and give some credit to what Liz Kendall was trying to do, actually, with regard to welfare. I think that the welfare issue has been very badly communicated by the government. We've got almost 6 million people on out-of-work benefits. And what we should be saying is we've got to get those who can work back in...
Absolutely right.
Well, this is one of the key strands that I want to explore, actually, in more detail after the break. I know in the audience, I also know that there are people that are concerned about these welfare changes and proposed changes as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to drill down into some of these announcements today, whether it's defence, whether it is welfare, and lots more after the break. I'll see you in 2.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The very unsettled weather across the eastern parts of the Mediterranean will continue for a little while yet, particularly across parts of Greece, Turkey, into Italy as well. There will be some further heavy, thundery rain to come with some more issues as a result. A bit drier further west, though, actually across much of Spain. A dry picture as we go through Thursday, but there is a band of rain out in the Atlantic, and that could spread towards Madeira as we go towards the end of the week. Otherwise, west is best when it comes to the sunshine.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, like yourself, I'm an Oldham boy, so I remember as a kid the holidays in Blackpool were just incredible. And I think, you know, what we did with this survey was trying to understand where people said they wanted to go, but I think the key bit was why. You know, so we wanted to understand what was important about the UK holiday and also just understand a little bit about, you know, attitudes to travelling abroad and the UK. And I think for me, 61% of people said the reason they need a holiday is family time. So for me, to be honest, whether that's in Cornwall, whether it's Essex, Lancashire, it doesn't matter. You know, what really matters is that time together, isn't it, with your family, your loved ones, that I think we all need more and more in a nutty world in which we live at the moment. So, yeah, it's what you're doing on holiday as well as where you're going.
Andy, how can we find a good deal out of this? What are some tips and tricks for keeping the spending under control if you're looking for especially if you're going to Cornwall, for example? I'd imagine if you're looking in July or August, it's going to be pretty expensive, right?
My advice would be, you know, research really carefully where you want to go. Think about what the location can offer, and we've got a range of holiday parks. You know what the holiday park can offer to you, and just try and plan early. I think it just takes that pressure away from later on. You know, everyone's on a to a degree of budget these days, but again, I think it's that time together that people will be willing to pay for.
Of course, part of the research as well, Andy, was to do with the economy. 62% of people you asked said that Brits feel we should be going on staycations in order to support our economy. Just how important is that?
Yeah, I think it's really important. It's, you know, the British tourism economy is worth many billions per annum, employs, you know, hundreds of thousands of people in tourism.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. My live studio audience, as you've just been hearing, and my panel, the MP Richard Tice, the MP Barry Gardner, alongside me. And I've also Michael Wilson, what a treat as well, economic guru. Can I call you that?
The guru?
Yeah.
I can't even spell it. That's wonderful.
Guru.
Thank you.
We like those, don't we? But look, before the break, we've all been trying to get our heads around the spring statement today. There was not a lot of optimism in the room, I have to say. One of the key points that are concerning people are around the changes to benefits. Let's listen to the Lib Dem leader, Ed Davey. He's speaking out about that.
I do also think we need to get people back into work, but we need to do that by supporting people, not punishing them. So we're really worried that some of the welfare proposals are going to hit the poorest in our country, people who will really struggle to work. We're seeing figures come out of the OBR suggesting 800,000 people are going to lose their PIP by the end of this period. Another 150,000 people lose their carers allowance. A double whammy for some households. That's actually not going to help the economy.
So he certainly doesn't think that this is a good thing. I've got to say there's a lot of people right across the political divide, actually, concerned about this. Member of my studio audience. Hello there. Tell me your concern.
My concern is that I'll be losing my benefits because of the statement today, and I received them because I've got a thing. I'm disabled.
OK. And how does that make you feel?
Worried.
Worried. Barry Gardner. So, of course, in case anyone's... Thank you very much for your question. In case anyone's not familiar with what happened, essentially we're trying to save £5 billion. It was suggested that the cuts announced or suggested previously were not going to do that. So then today we've had further cuts, predominantly to things like universal credit. The standard amount will raise, which is fair enough. The other side of it, which is the health side of it, freeze by 50%. Cut by 50% and then frozen going forward.
That's right. Look, we need to separate out what is the personal independence payment from the standard UC, the universal credit. And where this £500 comes from that we were talking about earlier, I think is from the rise in universal credit, which is from £92 to £106 a week. So that works out at £728 a year extra if you're on universal credit. But then not everybody is simply on universal credit. Other people have health, disability allowance and so on top of that, and that's the sort of area where you, sir, may well come into play, and you may find that, yeah, you're getting more on UC, but you're getting less on the disability allowance. Now, what the government's trying to do is it's trying to tackle the 600,000 people that are on disability allowance because they have some mental health issues, autism, as you know, it's all right across the spectrum. Some people just stress and distress, but others that have serious mental health issues. And they're trying to see if they can get those people back into work rather than staying on the disability allowance. And that is going to be a very tough ask. And I don't think that the way to do it is to cut their benefits in the first place. I'm all behind them helping people, supporting them into work, but I think that's the way to do it.
Even when this was put to a vote, would you vote in favour of the suggestions from the government? There's
going to be a lot of talking that has to go on between backbench MPs and the leadership of the government.
You, the measures that we know about, would you vote in favour of?
I am not happy with things as they stand, Michelle.
I'm asking, would you vote?
I know.
Would you vote for them or against?
I'm not going to say yet, because, as I say, there's a lot of discussion that I will want to have with Rachel Reeves' team before we end up in the vote situation, and it's how this can be ameliorated as far as I'm concerned.
I've got to say there's been welfare process against all of this stuff happening today, but Richard Tice, what's your thoughts on this?
I think I can help Barry here, because I don't think it'll ever come to a vote. I think there's a lot of talk about this that's been very badly communicated, but I suspect this will be kicked into the long grass. I don't think we'll see any savings on this. It's all about the targeting. Those who are genuinely sick, genuinely disabled, like you, sir, and genuinely vulnerable, and those genuinely looking for work. Of course, we should have a world-leading benefit system. The problem is that it is subject to huge abuse that, I'm afraid to say, we have to be honest, is off the scale. And what we need is everybody should have face-to-face assessments and appointments so you can genuinely look after those vulnerable. I think that's what the government should be doing.
But it is doing... No, sorry, Richard, it is doing that.
I would like to believe that, but I think...
No, that's one of the things that they've actually said they're doing.
But
they're bringing people in face-to-face to support them into work.
But it comes back to my point. It's clearly then badly being communicated because people are I think, concerned when actually clearly they wouldn't need to be concerned. That's what it's about.
Could I just put some meat on the bone with this? Because, I don't necessarily think you'll agree with these statistics. They're incredibly difficult to get hold of, very difficult to interpret. But it looks like a quarter of the working age, that's between 16 and 64, do not have a job. There are 9.3 million not actually looking for work in this country. That's the kind of size of the problem that we're talking about. And that rump of people who don't want to work has been a problem for politicians since God was a boy.
But it's grown since COVID by well over 1.5 million people, and rising now. And so I think we've got to be... we've got to address it, and we've got to say to people, work is a great thing. It's actually, work is good for your mental health. Being busy is good for your mental health. And sometimes you have a bad day. We've got to grow some resilience, some strength as individuals, and that's how we move forward. Let's never deny it. Serious mental health is a horrific, horrific illness. But those who are just having a bad day and just saying, I've got mental health issues, particularly young people, I'm sorry, we've got to say, toughen up, get out and get on, get a job and get to work.
I'm going to come to the lady in the front row in a second, if I can just get the microphone. But, you know, one of the key things that somehow gets lost, I think, in some of these conversations is that work isn't just a singular thing. You know, working doesn't mean you've got to be able to lug sacks up a hill or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
We live in such a digital world now, and actually you could sit in your own bedroom and you could be doing online work for a company based, I don't know, wherever, in the Seychelles. We live in this digitally accessible world now, and perhaps where someone couldn't do physical manual labour, there is still a world of work open to them, isn't there?
There is, and that's absolutely right, and that's why there are so many wonderful people who might be suffering a serious disability who are actually working. They're finding ways to work, whether it's working from home or whatever, and that's a great thing, and we would all want to support that and enhance that and get more people contributing to the economy.
Richard, today, I think the figure was 400 million that the government is putting in to upskilling people in order to be able to do precisely what you said, Michelle.
If there are companies and jobs for them to go to.
Yes, but we're talking about...
brings it back full circle,
yeah,
doesn't it?
but as Michelle says, we're talking about a global job market where people can work remotely from their own home and be doing something across a continent.
Can I bring the lady in on the front row? You've got a point to make.
Hi, yeah, Barry. I have a daughter who's ADHD. She was let down through mainstream school, colleges. Her self-esteem is not great.
Yep.
There's nothing out there for people like my daughter to get a job, and I know she would benefit from getting it. What should I do?
Sorry, before I get Barry to answer, can I just ask what you mean when you say there's nothing out there?
There's no support, there's no help to get her into work, and she tells me all the time, I want to work, but these feelings, and
does she apply for jobs or what?
She does. She does. She has been proactive, but it's just getting her there.
Right.
And it's having that mentor, someone with her. But also, if we've got all this money that we're spending on hotels for migrants, and we're starting to aim and to go for the disabled, it's just not fair.
I want to come back to that latter point because I can tell you now, my inbox, I've been inundated with people making this point about asylum costs, but just on that specific point about the support that some people may need to get into work.
I think one of the biggest problems that we've had over the past 15 years is that kids haven't been supported when they really needed it. The early intervention wasn't there under the Conservatives, and that meant that people then became 18. What happened? Oh, well, now you're no longer a kid, we're no longer going to take care of you. And so they haven't had the support, and they never get the support. And it seems to me that's your daughter's situation. But the mental health support system, the CALMs, the children and adult mental health support systems, are absolutely bust. Their budgets are gone, they're full up for months ahead, and people are having to travel to the other ends of the country to try and get that support.
So great, Barry. Well, let's have a world-leading support system that we want, but let's use our own money. Let's stop sending billions of pounds to Mauritius, for example, for the Chagos deal. Let's stop sending billions of pounds for overseas aid. Keep the money here, spend it on our own people properly. Then we can agree. Happy days.
And this, honestly, this notion about spending money seemingly everywhere, other than charity beginning at home, essentially, is coming through hugely. So many viewers are getting in touch and saying, I cannot basically believe that we're going to cut yet again budgets while simultaneously spending increasing amounts of money, as it is, on putting people up into hotels, etc., that essentially should not be here. Also coming through on the inbox, most of you at home, again, you just don't believe this notion that you are essentially going to be better off at all. Never mind the £500. Lots of you are pointing out to me, Michelle, you can talk about £500, but what about things like council tax going up? What about things like your electricity costs going up and things like that? What the sense that I'm getting from you at home that are joining in the conversation is they might be giving to you with one hand, but they are essentially, in your minds, taking away from you with the other. Can I just get that microphone to the row behind? Yes, sir, you've got a point.
Obviously, with council tax, like you were saying, going up and everything like that, all our bills are going up. But if you remember back in the 80s, 90s, we had things like play schemes, places for kids to go to.
Yeah.
We had all this back in the day. I remember going to one, and I think a lot of this mental health and stuff, yes, I suffer from it myself, but I think what it is these schemes were fantastic for kids. Start young, and then we're building a better generation because we can guide people rather than just sitting them on the streets.
Yeah.
So where's the money going?
The problem is that the Treasury looks at the cost of it, you know, of providing those schemes, and they never look at what they're saving in mental health, in cost to the health service, in cost to juvenile offending, the court system, because all of it comes through and costs you in the end. And if you only put that infrastructure in place in the beginning, you wouldn't have those costs at the end. But Treasury, they look at the money up front, and that's the problem.
Dino's been in touch at home. He says, Michelle, at the end of the day, you got the impression, Dino, that so much of this is scaremongering, particularly you're suggesting when it comes to benefits and welfare. Kirsty says everyone keeps saying that work is good for you, but she says it's only good if you've got a good job. Yeah. I've got to say, yeah, but I don't... See, I don't necessarily... I mean, I don't want to be... That's not always realistic, Kirsty. I mean, I don't know what jobs you've done in your life.
I started off as a loo cleaner in an electronics factory in Blackheath.
But it's not always the case, then, that work is only good if you enjoy what you're doing, because work has so many benefits. You know, if you're depressed and whatever and you're feeling sorry for yourself, physically having to get out of your bed and get showered and get changed and brush your hair... Even those kind of simple acts, if you're not in a good mind space, they can be good for you.
But Michelle... Can we just pick up the gentleman just there? So talk about... In the 80s and 90s, the economy was growing at 2.5% to 3.5% every single year. And the tax take, the total amount of tax take, was somewhere between 31 and 33, 34%. It's now going up to 37, 38%, proving that actually... Our taxes are being wasted, spent badly, lack of productivity. That's what's really going on. Wasting it on DEI jobs, diversity, equality and inclusion. What we want is frontline jobs that help support people. That's the real issue here, and we've got no growth at all. And just to remind people, starting here, growth forecast for this year alone has been halved. And in January, the economy shrank. And I fear that actually it's going to continue to shrink. I think we could be in serious economic trouble with this lack of productivity.
I'm going to bring the chap in there. Oh, you've got the microphone already. Go ahead.
Richard just stole my thunder because I was just about to say, Barry, that the predicted growth is down. You talked about growth before being up.
For this year?
Yeah, it's down.
Yeah.
Nobody's talked about inflation yet. Inflation's set to rise.
No, actually, sorry, the rate of inflation has actually come down.
I'm talking about if you can rely on the OBR forecast, it's set to rise. And how much confidence have we got in that?
Yeah,
you know? But it's set to rise. So we talk about job creation. And did Rachel get it wrong last October in the budget?
Just to be clear, so you're both kind of right. So inflation has come down today to 2.8, which is a slightly larger fall than expected. But just to echo your suggestion here, it's now estimated that inflation is going to go to 3.2% this year rather than the 2.5% that it was estimated to be. What's your response to that?
No, look, we're in a unique international situation, right? The tariffs that Trump has...
Barry Gardner, right, whenever the Tories used to sit there and they used to say, do you know what, we've got all this stuff going on, whether it's Brexit, whether it's Ukraine or whatever, the Labour Party, you could hear their groans from wherever in the world that you were. And there used to be this sentiment from the Labour Party that just blaming external international factors, it's not good enough. And yet, actually, that's how Rachel Reeves started her budget, her spring statement today.
I'm not only blaming that, I'm also blaming the Liz Truss budget. I'm also blaming the 15 years of underinvestment in our services, in our schools, in our youth services, in our mental health services, in our NHS that we've had for the past 15 years. So it's not all international, but the international situation today is absolutely unique. We've got an American president who's using tariffs as a means of negotiating other trade deals.
But Barry, in December, as a Christmas present to all of us, the OBR is suddenly going to say, peace and love breaks out. And all of a sudden, growth is going to increase.
No, it's not.
Well, they're saying it's going to increase from 1.5% next year, which was their October number, to 1.8%, 1.9% next year.
That's right.
How is that going to happen? That's just not...
It's going to happen because, as you know, this week, in Parliament. I'm sure you probably voted against it, Richard, but we had the Planning and Infrastructure Bill, and it's because of that specifically that the OBR says that that is going to boost growth, and that's why they've revised their figures, because we've put that in place, we're driving that growth into the economy, we're going to be building those homes, and that is going to create the jobs which I hope this gentleman's, sons will be able to benefit from, and everybody else. So but that's what the OBR has said. That's what they've predicated it upon.
You do realise we haven't built 300,000 homes a year since the 1970s?
Yes, I do realise that, and that's part of the problem, and it's why we need to do it now, Richard.
And also, people don't necessarily want to live where those new houses are going to be built. Well,
I've got to say, I can hear you all at home. You're literally yelling into your screens as these guys are debating how many houses we're going to be building. I can hear you screaming at your TV sets. It doesn't matter how many houses you build, Michelle, if you constantly have essentially open borders on the likes of the Channel, because the people that get into these houses talk to you. I can hear you. Look, something that I want you to all ponder after the break. There's been many suggestions out there that actually, rather than squeezing people on benefits, etc., what about squeezing those at the top? There's been suggestions that a wealth tax could actually be the answer to some of the woes faced in this country. Ponder that after the break, and we'll look at it in 2.
Good evening. Here's your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Whilst in the south it's going to stay fine for a little while yet, further north we do have some wet weather pushing its way in. That's because there's a front which has already started to make its way into the far northwest of Scotland, but it's going to continue to edge southeastwards as we go through tonight and into tomorrow. So we're going to see some rain spreading across much of Scotland and also Northern Ireland. That rain could be quite heavy, quite persistent across western parts of Scotland in particular, a bit drier further east. Meanwhile, across the bulk of England and Wales, staying largely dry with some clear skies, especially towards the southeast. And here we could see temperatures taking a little bit of a drop, so there may be a touch of frost in some prone rural spots. And a few pockets of mist and fog are possible as well. But across Scotland, away from the far north, where it may be quite bright for a time, for many parts, it is going to be a wet picture first thing. Some persistent rain could be a bit heavy, so it could cause some spray on the roads. Also pretty grey and a bit damp for some parts of Northern Ireland too. Some drizzly rain perhaps first thing across some parts of the far north of England and maybe western parts of Wales, particularly towards Snowdonia. But otherwise across England and Wales, once any mist and fog does clear away, it is going to be a bright picture and staying mostly fine through much of the day. The best of the sunshine towards the southeast. Meanwhile, across Scotland and Northern Ireland, it is still going to be cloudy. It's going to be wet at times and some blustery winds to watch out for too. These will make it feel relatively unpleasant, but towards the southeast, feeling warm in the sunshine, temperatures peaking around 17 or 18. That rain in the northwest does sweep through towards the southeast as we go overnight into Friday, so a wet start across southeastern parts, but that rain clears through with then sunny spells, but also plenty of showers following in behind. Some of these showers could be heavy, could be thundery. There could even be some snow over the higher ground of Scotland because we are going to see our temperatures dropping. After a fine start on Saturday, more rain arrives later.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello
there, everybody. Welcome back to Dewbs & Co. Special on the spring statement today. Lots and lots and lots of you getting in touch, and you do seem to be echoing a central point among you. We're all talking about cutting benefits and slashing them again even further today. Lots of you are asking that simple question: why on earth are we doing all of this to people in this country while simultaneously spending a fortune either A, overseas, or B, on people from overseas that essentially should not be here? I'll look at that question in a little bit more detail before the end of the programme. But look, Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride, he was very robust, I thought, in response to the spring statement. Let's take a listen.
What did the Chancellor tax? She taxed jobs and wealth creation. She's destroyed livelihoods, businesses clobbered, big and small companies, the backbone of our economy. Enterprise crushed on the altar of her ineptitude. The CIPD telling us a third of those businesses affected will shed labour. Morrison's losing 200 jobs, Tesco 400, Sainsbury's 3,000 jobs lost. No wonder the Federation of Small Business say that outside of the pandemic, business confidence has been left at its lowest level on record.
And you see, this is one of the key points that many people feel very strongly about. You're a businessman, Richard Tice. The points that Mel Stride were making there about, you know what, you can have all of the goodness in the land, but if you don't have the jobs, essentially, if the companies are not expanding and employing, it's all for nothing, isn't it?
Well, it's worse than that, actually. Confidence has been destroyed by the blunder budget in October. I've had lots of people in Boston Skegness, business owners, saying that they're not hiring people. They're sadly having to reduce hours, particularly in retail and hospitality, reduce opening hours. All of this leads to lower growth, and that's why I'm so concerned we'll be lucky to have any growth whatsoever this year. It's a disaster for confidence, and without confidence, people won't invest their own money, their own equity, in trying to grow their business.
Richard, I think there's going to be another narrative this year, and it goes a bit like this. The FTSE is outperforming the stock market in the United States. That's almost unheard of. The pound is still relatively strong against the euro and against the dollar, relatively. Not hugely, but relatively. And the gilt markets haven't taken fright about the amount of debt. Why? Because the UK is seen, I know this sounds a bit weird, but is seen as a sort of stable...
Yeah.
An island of stability, if you like.
Well, you say that, but actually
in all the other countries.
But today, the bond markets, the moment she sat down, actually the cost of government debt on a 10-year and 30-year did spike upwards. So
and it then came straight back down again, Richard.
They're on red alert.
I think,
no.
I think that's the gypsies and the vagabonds, isn't it, doing the business?
No, I mean, you know that what the bond markets did today was they spiked up, they spiked down, and then they came back to basically 4.7%.
Yeah, but Barry, they're at the highest level for 15 years, and that's because they're dead nervous, there's no growth in the system, and there's government
They were nervous, and then they realised what actually had been said in the statement, and they stabilised. You can't get away with that one, I'm sorry.
It's 25 basis points more than it was a month ago, Barry, and it's at a 15-year high, so I can get away with it.
Well, you know, one of the things as well that many people talk about when it comes to work and getting jobs is this kind of 16-hour cliff edge that seems to exist for a lot of people when they are on benefits. I don't know if anyone is affected by this in the audience or at home. I'm sure you might be. But I hear Reform UK talking about this a lot. What's your kind of thoughts around that?
When I have a taxi driver say to me there's a shortage of taxis in a certain town because they've worked out they'll have more money in their pocket at the end of the week if they drive for 16 hours and then claim benefits for back pay for the balance 24 hours, you know you've got something badly wrong. And too many people are making that calculation because the tax system is wrong. The threshold at which you pay income tax has been frozen for so many years. And that's why you've got to lift that threshold so that going to work pays, and people make the calculation, if I go to work, I'll have more money in my pocket at the end
Richard,
of the week. I hope we can agree on that, Barry.
Well, I heard you say that earlier today, actually. You advocated raising the threshold from 12,500 to 20,000.
Which was in our contract at the election.
But obviously you hadn't done the arithmetic, because what that would do is it would straight away reduce the money coming into the public purse by 9.75 billion a year. Now, if you also include the freezing of the threshold, which is 1.3 billion, you take that up to about 11 11.5 billion a year, you would be costing the Exchequer. Now, that's 11.5 billion that's not going to defence, that's not going to the NHS, that's not going to be spent on public services. Where are you going to get it from? You're going to have to borrow.
No, I'm going to scrap net stupid zero and save £30 billion.
Yeah, and
even the Climate Change Committee agrees with me.
Yeah, you see, I heard you say that as well.
And bills have gone up 280 quid
I heard you
since the election, Barry.
Let him respond.
Energy bills have gone up since the election 280 quid, about 18%, despite the fact that Ed Miliband told us the bills would come down by
and the reason they have is...
When will the bills come down?
Well, the reason they've gone up, of course, is because of the tie of your electricity bill to the wholesale gas market, and international gas prices have gone up. But I heard you say it earlier, you only half quoted what the Committee on Climate Change say, because you're right, they say net zero cost will be about 0.2% of UK GDP, 0.2%.
30 billion quid a year,
right?
To the taxpayer.
No, not to the taxpayer, and that's what they say. They say it's actually most of it played by the private sector, and if you didn't...
give it to you?
Sorry?
You're not going to want their money?
No. They're investing it in the infrastructure. They're paying it in the infrastructure. And what happens is if you don't invest, the cost, this is what they say, which you didn't quote, they say that actually the cost of not doing it would be infinitely more.
Absolute rubbish. Funny.
Well, you disagree with them on that point, but you're happy to quote them on the point that you think makes the point you want.
My point's the only point they've got right. Look, in America, gas prices are a third of ours.
If they're that daft...
A quarter of ours, because they use their own shale gas that they produce domestically, and we should do the same here. We've got this energy treasure on the feet, and we should use it, Barry. You know it.
Right. OK, you're all clapping him because he's talking about our oil and our gas, right? But it's not. It's not our oil and our gas.
Yes, it is.
No, I'm sorry, it's not. It's sold on the international markets, right? It doesn't come into the UK, right? What happens is it's subsidised in this country by you and me because Rishi Sunak introduced a 130% super tax deductible, which meant that the exploitation of those oil and gas fields, guess who pays for it? Not Shell, not Sikar, but actually you and me, 100%. We pay for the development of it. And hang on, let me finish. And then we give them 30% on top, right? That's the subsidy that you and I are giving to the international companies. They make the money. And this is what I've got against you guys, Richard, because you guys, you're all super wealthy, you've made all your millions, and yet you're telling the poorest people in our society, you know why you're poor? You're poor because there are people who are even poorer than you are in the rest of the world and the immigrants coming into this country. And you get the poor to blame the people who are even poorer.
So let me respond then.
Look, the reality is that America's gas price, it's the same gas, folks. It's a third of our price. Why? Because they use it domestically, they extract it domestically, and you're completely wrong, Barry. That treasure under our feet, oil and gas, we as taxpayers, we all own it. You license people to extract it, but you've decided not to extract it.
Right.
It's negligent to leave that asset in the ground rather than to extract it and use it domestically.
Let's just clear this up. So if we extract this oil and gas that you're saying is ours, Barry's saying that has to be sold.
It doesn't.
International.
It does. It doesn't. So why is the American gas price a third of ours, Barry?
Sorry.
Just answer the question.
The American gas price is a third of ours because they use shale gas.
So there's not an international price in it. You can keep it domestically and use it domestically.
You
That's
can't.
The answer.
I'm sorry.
That's literally what they're doing, and you've just agreed with me.
No, I haven't.
The international oil markets are a law unto themselves. That's all I'd say about that. I suspect you're probably slightly more right than he is.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks. But
let me put to you,
Michelle, can I just finish that though? Because the point is this. The North Sea Basin, as Richard knows, is a declining field. It's declining by about 7% every year. Those jobs are going to go, and that oil and gas is going to go. As I say, it's sold on the international markets. It doesn't come into the UK, except once it's been refined, and then we pay for it separately. But the profit is made by the companies. And the whole issue is this. How are we going to transition those people? We've already lost 20,000 of them in the industry because it's a declining field. How are we going to actually transition them into the decent jobs that your two kids want for the future? That's why we're investing in the skills, the 400 300 million that I talked about earlier, because we need to have a fair transition that doesn't leave them high and dry like we left the miners high and dry 50 years ago.
Interesting, we've just discovered a gas field in Lincolnshire that would give us 10 years' worth of supply of gas. Good jobs, skilled jobs, and cheaper bills, lower energy costs, lower cost of living. This is all due to net zero that has been imposed on the people, ordinary working people, by the people in Westminster. It's a catastrophe.
Let me ask you this. One of the points that keeps coming in, and people are suggesting it on the inbox as well, is wealth tax. Many people saying you should tax the uber rich. Does anyone agree with that? Hands up in the audience.
Yep.
Barry does. Lots of people in the audience does. Can I get a microphone to someone in the audience to have their view? But Richard Tice, your thoughts on that wealth tax? Do you think we should have something like that?
So if you tax the very, very wealthy, do you think they're going to stay here? We live in a globally mobile world, and those people are already leaving in their droves in terror at what this Labour government is doing to this country. You should actually do the opposite. Tell you what you should do. You should charge wealthy people to come and enjoy the privilege of living here. That's what you should do, as opposed to your ridiculous sort of assault on non-doms. They're all leaving, Barry, and so we're actually going to have less tax revenues.
Let me ask the chap with the microphone. What's the comment you want to make?
Well, really, yes, we should have an Uber tax on those who are earning more wealth than some people who are lower down the food chain.
Yeah, but what about that fact that Rich is making, that actually they'll just say goodbye?
Well, I think they might say goodbye, but other people will come into the country and invest in the country. You mentioned about jobs going in the past 15 years. Let's be right. In the past 45 years, from when Margaret Thatcher came into power, we've seen industries go. The car industry went. Yeah. The coal industry went.
Exactly.
We've gone from an industrial sector to a service industry. Yeah.
Well,
and
you're
you talked about
absolutely
working
right.
from home. You know, people's mental health working from home in isolation has a bearing against going into an office being surrounded by people.
Yeah. You're right, sir, but because of this drive to decarbonise, because of net zero, we're deindustrialising. We've got the steel industry on its knees, we've got the automotive industry collapsing, the oil and gas industry collapsing, the chemicals industry collapsing. This is what is happening. Because of decarbonisation, we are deindustrialising society and making everybody poorer.
When Elon Musk was talking the other day, a lot of people were deriding him. And I was interviewing somebody at the time and said, so what's the problem with Elon Musk? And he said, look around the UK, there are thousands of Elon Musks. All they need is the opportunity to be able to express themselves in the kind of businesses that they want to run. We're terribly good at ideas and not very good at actually putting them into practice.
Absolutely right.
That's where I would think, that's where I want a government, if there's
But that's because of over-regulation and over-taxation. People flee to America because you've got lower taxes, lower regulation, smarter regulation, and they've got higher growth. It's really very simple.
I'll tell you something else that's very simple. Time. It marches on. Look at this. It's almost marched out of time. I very much appreciate each and every one in the audience, each and every one of you at home, and of course, many of you, all of you on the panel tonight. I've got to say, all those millionaires, there's many of them, that patriotic millionaires, they want to be charged more tax. Well, guess what you can do, my friends? Pay it voluntarily, if you're that desperate to do so. That's all I've got time for. See.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Whilst in the south it's going to stay fine for a little while yet, further north we do have some wet weather pushing its way in. That's because there's a front which has already started to make its way into the far northwest of Scotland, but it's going to continue to edge southeastwards as we go through tonight and into tomorrow. So we're going to see some rain spreading across much of Scotland and also Northern Ireland. That rain could be quite heavy, quite persistent across western parts of Scotland in particular, a bit drier further east. Meanwhile, across the bulk of England and Wales, staying largely dry with some clear skies, especially towards the southeast. And here we could see temperatures taking a little bit of a drop, so there may be a touch of frost in some prone rural spots. And a few pockets of mist and fog are possible as well. But across Scotland, away from the far north, where it may be quite bright for a time, For many parts, it is going to be a wet picture first thing. Some persistent rain could be a bit heavy, so it could cause some spray on the roads. Also pretty grey and a bit damp for some parts of Northern Ireland too. Some drizzly rain perhaps first thing across some parts of the far north of England and maybe western parts of Wales, particularly towards Snowdonia. But otherwise across England and Wales, once any mist and fog does clear away, it is going to be a bright picture and staying mostly fine through much of the day. The best of the sunshine towards the southeast. Meanwhile, across Scotland and Northern Ireland, it is still going to be cloudy. It's going to be wet at times and some blustery winds to watch out for too. These will make it feel relatively unpleasant, but towards the southeast, feeling warm in the sunshine, temperatures peaking around 17 or 18. That rain in the northwest does sweep through towards the southeast as we go overnight into Friday. So a wet start across southeastern parts, but that rain clears through with then sunny spells, but also plenty of showers following in behind. Some of these showers could be heavy, could be thundery. There could even be some snow over the higher ground of Scotland because we are going to see our temperatures dropping. After a fine start on Saturday, more rain arrives later.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News travel.
Long delays on the M4 tonight. Now, a car's broken down, blocking off the inside lane at Junction 2 at Brentford just before the elevated section, causing long queues back through West London, back onto the A4, back through Chiswick, all the way back over the Hammersmith flyover, back into Earls Court. And in West London, Hampstead Road at Regent's Park, that's still blocked off by an accident in the one-way system, of course, at Harrington Square. In Worcestershire at Kidderminster, the A456 St Mary's Ringway, that's blocked westbound. Accident investigation work is underway off Blackwell Street, causing queues back to the Weavers Wharf traffic lights. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
There's just 2 weeks left to see how you could be a spring winner, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag and not 1, but 2 sought-after designer watches. Make sure you don't miss out, as lines close on the 4th of April. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the people